call this regular session Mayor and City Council meeting for Thursday, August 13, 2015 at 6:04 p.m. Can you please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please remain standing for the invocation. Mr. Billy, can you lead us?
Our Father in heaven, we're very grateful to be gathered together as a community to support each other and moving the work of this community forward. Grateful for our elected officials and their willingness to volunteer their time to be here to deliberate on these matters that are important to the community and moving forward. We're grateful for a wonderful community, for the moisture that we've received, for the freedoms that we enjoy, and for the associations that we have as a community. We ask thy blessings to be here, that thy spirit will prevail and that we will be able to move the work forward in the best interests of the community and according to thy will. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. I guess we have a call to the public, but it'll be on item 10, so we'll wait till we reach that item. Communications. We have reports. Number one, update report from Santa Cruz County Flood Control District on monsoon season preparation with Public Works. Do we have Public Works here? Sure. There we go. Be kind enough to just introduce yourself to the public and let them know what the item is.
Jesus Valdez, Public Works Director for Santa Cruz County. Wasn't sure what I was going to present, but yeah, I could talk a little bit about the preparation we're doing for the events. Hopefully, well, not hopefully, but they seem to be dying down. One of the things that how we prepared is that we had on-call contractors from our JOC ready to assist as soon as an emergency came up. Even currently, right now, we're cutting brushes from the Nogales wash, so that they don't fall into it and create an obstruction for flow. Other things that the flood control was able to accomplish was rebuild the bank on Leyva Street, or sorry, Leyva Bridge, and that's been completed. With that said, that's how we were preparing. We were waiting to assist and waiting for the call from the emergency personnel, and we're still waiting and ready to respond to any sort of event that.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? I noticed the improvement on the bank there, Mr. And I'm not an engineer or anything, but I'm assuming that's going to help, like, make the water flow without eating away the remaining bank, or?
Well, it could, but the reason we're taking a look at that is that over time it accumulates, and when you get run up, all that debris falls into the wash, and it washes downstream, and just debris that we could take away earlier than later. And the other reason, sometimes these branches of these trees that they get really big and start pushing against the walls of the concrete and popping them out. So those are the two main reasons we're taking a look at removing some of that. And it does help with the flow, but that's not our primary reason why we're doing it. I have just some information for you guys on the projects we're doing, if you guys want to hear it.
Yes,
and I'll update you on Nogalitos and how's that's going, and then John has a list for you guys that he'll go through. If you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. But Nogalitos, we got a concurrence from the Corps that about the 404 delineation, and they expanded a little bit, but within the boundaries of what we're thinking. So now that we have the delineation of the 404, now that gives us the opportunity to go to the property owner and tell him exactly what we need as far as an easement. I have a meeting with him tomorrow morning. I suspect everything's going to go fine, and I anticipate going out for bid late September with the intentions of starting sometime in October. It's going to be 2 phases. Phase number 1 would be the detention basin, and that's just digging a hole and doing the prep work and the fencing. Phase 2, which we'll discuss further with your staff, is the actual valley gutter that would go on the road. The district feels that we can't start that until we're able to identify the utilities that need to be lowered. If we start it, I think there's going to be major conflict, and valley gutter / drainage project turns into a utility. And we don't have I don't think we have the resources to address that right now. But we'll continue to work with staff, and maybe staff has give us recommendation how we get that done, either concurrently with this project or next fiscal year.
You know, my question is, you know, since I live in that area, every time it rains hard, we get the streets flooded there. It seems like an arroyo that comes out of the back of Nogales or Edna Street or Lincoln Street. You know, is there any drainage system, or is it just too much of a volume coming through?
That's what it is. Well, right now there's not a detention mechanism, so what you're seeing is it accumulates, and then because debris backs up, that's what you see at first, right? You see all the debris, all the stuff, the leftover from what cows do in there. What you'll see more is they'll provide some detention, and they'll trickle out slowly. So it won't rush out all at once. Okay. And it's not a flood area per FEMA. We're able to do the project because it's under our jurisdiction. And that's how it's been identified. But you'll see some major, it'll be a major improvement. I'll say that. I think the people will be happy.
Well, that's why we suffer with our roads in that area. The streets get, you know, the asphalt gets eaten away and gets potholes and everything else. Become craters, you know, after the monsoons.
I agree.
So this will help.
That will help tremendously.
Great.
To upgrade the living situation during the monsoon season.
It gives us something to tell the residents there. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then John's going to go over the rest of the list.
Afternoon, John Hayes, floodplain coordinator for Santa Cruz County Flood Control District. As Mr. Valdez said, I'm just going to brief you quickly on the different projects we have going inside the city outside of the Nogales Basin. Primary one that we're working on and focusing on right now is the Ephraim Canyon Flood Control Project, which would be a large detention basin upstream of I-19. This actually is something that's been apparently on the books with the Corps of Engineers off and on since about the 1950s. So it's a project we're trying to get done. We are nearing the end of the engineering phase for the design concept report, but we have already applied for federal grants on it under the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant opportunity that opened up earlier this year and closed last month. We're seeking approximately $7.5 million from the federal government for that project. So with any luck, hopefully by October we'll find out on the funding for it. It's a competitive grant. They're providing up to a total of $150 million nationwide. So with any luck we'll get that. The other projects we have are the Baffert Flood Control Basin, which would be located north of Baffert Drive. To the east of the Nogales Wash in the area where the Baffert Ranch currently sits, mostly looking at the agricultural fields there, which are all floodplain right now. That one in combination with not only the Ephraim Canyon, but also Mariposa Basin, which we're looking at the old Barrow Pit for I-19, back off of La Quinta, near the city-county boundary on the west side of the city. All three of those combined, based on the engineering analysis that we have right now, would indicate that the Nogales Wash flooding would be confined to channel from Baffert Drive northwards within the city of Nogales. The other project we're looking at besides the Nogales project is, and it's only at the conceptual phase right now, is the idea of basically restoring the wetland area of Potrero Creek in the area of the Paladuro Golf Course. Basically excavating out the golf course potentially, reestablishing the wetland there, potentially even creating its first of the kind in Arizona mitigation bank for wetland areas, and as well as providing additional flood storage in the area, helping to reduce downstream flows. I'll be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Well, those are all areas that eventually create those problems out there by Old Tucson Road, I guess, and Chula Vista area in the past now. So that would kind of help maybe with the flow there, or was that mostly off the channel, the main channel that comes to town?
That will help, the Potrero one will help mostly downstream from I-19, so that's not much of within the city that would actually benefit from that, because that area does go through the Los Lagunas wetlands right now. There is the warehouse that Mr. Panasopoulos has just about right at the county boundary. It would then have more impact directly on Chula Vista and the Pete Kitchen area. However, the other three major basins would basically take, by estimate, somewhere between 1,000 to 1,250 properties inside the city of Nogales out of the federal floodplains.
Any questions? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Jesus Valdez for working with me and coming up with the funding for the repair work we were able to get accomplished at Nogales Wash. If it wasn't for Jesus' effort, I don't know if we would have gotten the money to do the repair work. So I want to thank him for reaching out and helping the city with that project.
Listen, thank you all for really getting on top of things. And we've had those past floods here the last year or two, and I think hopefully this will alleviate a lot of that problem, especially in that every retention project. Really do the work there that needs to be done. So thank you guys. I mean, from all the community for the good work you do.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
On this Paladuro golf course, are you talking about removing maybe, I think there was a hole there, like hole 8 or 7. Are you talking about removing that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Rojas. It would be basically excavating out the eastern end of the golf course. I'm not sure how far back. My understanding is that when the golf course was actually constructed originally, there was a wetland there that was actually filled in. And so this would be reestablishing that wetland. So we would require that excavation out, but that's the only way we're going to create the additional storage. It's not exactly, the area is not exactly set up in a manner that would support the idea of a normal detention basin. If you were to build an above ground structure in the area, you're going to be flooding out some of the low-lying homes along the Country Club Golf Course Road. If you were to try to do what we're looking at doing for Ephraim Canyon, which is an excavated basin, the water table comes up there so high that during the monsoons you'd lose a lot of that volume. So the concept of producing a wetland area in there that would take advantage of the water table that's naturally there, reestablish that vegetation, but also provide some additional flood storage is about the best solution we can come up to benefit downstream areas.
Do you have the funding for the engineering at this time, or are you going to seek basically cooperation from the county and the city?
At this time, we don't have engineering at this money at this point for it. The project, as I mentioned, is only in the conceptual phase right now. I understand that there is some movement by some other entities who are looking at also the possibility of partnering with us on this. So right now it's a little bit more in their hands. We're kind of waiting, but we think the project is valid enough to at least put it into our radar so that we can identify funding in the future for it.
Thank you, thank you.
Anybody, yes, Vice Mayor.
Just one other question, Mr. Mayor, on Ephraim Canyon, you mentioned you were looking at grant funding for it of $7.5 million. Is that 100% grant
No.
funded, or is there gonna be a local match for that?
No, sir, Mr. Lucero. That would be a 75-25% match under the federal flood mitigation assistance. The $7.5 million represents the federal share of that, and the county would then fund basically, I believe the numbers are just shy of $2.5 million for the local match.
Does the funding there cover the local match?
It depends. We
Is
got,
it right
we got
answer or wrong
approximately. No, you know, to be open with you, the loan that the county got to build 2 projects, currently there's 3.7. We're gonna use about 1.2 to do the bank protection on Tucson Road. And then the rest of the money, hopefully will go to good use. This is one of the possible projects where it could go.
So potentially the funding could be there.
Yeah.
It's all dependent on the board.
Yeah, but that'd be great if we could build that. My recommendation, along with John's, is to let's use any money we can to build this. It would really benefit the city tremendously.
Is there anything that we as a city can do to help with that grant process?
John?
At this time, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't. The grant process is in. The grant applications have been turned in. I mean, potentially, there's always the potential for lobbying the congressional caucus to see if they would, you know, kind of lean on the powers that be to say, hey, this is a good project, especially since it would remove an estimated 260 of the 290 structures along Western Avenue that are in the floodplain. But beyond that, I'm not really sure of anything that the city could do at this time.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, I think that's something that shouldn't be too difficult for us to draft up a letter in support of this grant that we can be sent to our congressional delegation in support of the county's grant proposal.
They don't have a open board type where the public or maybe the officials from the county would sit in, or?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. It's pretty much the grant applications will be collected. They'll be submitted to FEMA, and FEMA will make the decision on which projects will get the grant monies.
But like Vice Mayor Lucero said, we could send a letter maybe to help.
I don't see how it could hurt.
Actually, I think you guys could have a lot of influence talking to the right people. More so than us.
Just, well, we know what we have to do. Yeah, anything else the council would like to ask? Or anything else you'd like to add on?
You know, one more thing. When the budget time comes, you know, I think a better way maybe to work with each other is if we could get together with Nogales staff and come up with, you know, some of the projects that you guys have in mind. Not the big ones, right? Not like what we're looking at here, but maybe some. How do we address some of the just the debris, removal of debris? How do we? I don't know. You know, what's something that needs to be addressed? That way we could put a line item or have some funding set aside. I'll tell you what, it's hard. You know, mid budget and shift gears. So I think that I would recommend that maybe that's something that can be brought up in the next joint meeting that we have together with the county and city.
Does that look like something that would be able to handle?
Mr. Members of the council, it's a wonderful suggestion. I know that of the many departments that the county has and the city has, I know that our 2 public works departments work very well together. There's an open communication and a dialogue, mutual interest to help each other out. I would suggest that we just capitalize on that relationship and make sure that there's a program point every year where at least an initial list of projects is generated at the staff level that can be brought to you as a city council and a board of directors for, you know, just the dialogue that needs to happen to finalize those projects and make sure that it's something that we're moving forward with. Because they do work very well together. They have a great dialogue and communication.
Well, I guess that dialogue would have to take place as soon as possible, because we're right in the middle of our, well, I don't know, we're in the middle of the monsoon yet, but the thing is that if the debris is there, that's what usually causes problems where it gets clogged up, and you wouldn't have those avenues for the water to run off. So maybe we need to start working on that and starting that dialogue to make sure that we can accomplish and get those channels, you know, opened up. Make sure they don't get clogged up.
And, you know, one more thing that I'll add is if the city has any interest, maybe county personnel coming to development service, the city's development service, maybe twice a week in the morning for 4 hours. You know, we would provide the computer, whatever software would be needed to get the information to make decisions there. That's not out of the question.
Creating more of a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
That's a great idea too.
If you guys wouldn't mind discussing that in your joint meeting.
Well, we really appreciate your presence here tonight and filling us in. It seems like those are the things that the community really needed overall, city and county. So hopefully, working together, we'll be able to accomplish and get that done.
Sounds good.
We're looking forward to the board and the council will be in agreement. We'll all put our best foot forward and get that done, because that's something that's very important. And thank you guys that are out there doing the groundwork. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I guess the next item number 2 is an update on GPS program by Councilman Farad.
We get an agenda, so you can give me an update, Mr. Marcellus, can you give me an update with the GPS?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the GPS. As we're directed, we order and receive the GPS units that we need to install in all our city vehicles. We have started that process. So we already have the units here. Our fleet department is installing all the GPS, and we'll move forward with that. And we hope that for the next council meeting, we will have most of the units with GPS units that we can use.
Sounds like you're starting.
Yeah, we already started that. We already have some installed. Especially the directors. My unit has one. Jacobs and I believe Marcel Michelier has another one. So we started that way. We're moving forward with that.
About the numbering on the vehicles, some of them don't have the marking on the side of the doors, on the numbers on, they're in the rear. The rear of the cars in the front of the vehicle. Would it be possible to put the numbers on the sides of the vehicles?
Yeah, most of the public work vehicles have in both sides and in the back. Some, because they have some attachments there, it's really hard to put in the back. But we're trying to make an effort to have as easy to see as possible on all vehicles. So, and that really has helped us a lot to identify issues that say, well, this car was in this location, and say, well, what car? So there's a number there that they can refer and say, I can identify that, and I have a list that I carry in my truck. When somebody called me and say, so-and-so, I saw this vehicle, and I say, okay, what's the number? And I can check really quick what it is. And it's easy to see from far away. It's not the little numbers, so I think we put 6 inches or larger, the numbers, and with the initials, so we identify sanitation, sewer, water, or parks, whatever it is. So that was an effort to really try to identify and avoid somebody say, well, it wasn't me, it was somebody else. So we have a way to deal with that.
Mr. Mayor. Councilman Parada and members of the council, one of the issues that we struggle with on the identification side, I know this item is the GPS, but real quick, since it was brought up, is standardization. So I think in Public Works, we're fairly close, if not all the way there, in terms of getting the bigger numbers on these units, but we do have other departments that do have the unit numbers on, they're just smaller. So you know, slowly but surely we'll get those units through that process and get the bigger numbers put on there. I know that so anyway, it's a process, but we got a lot of different departments to take into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Did you have any other questions? No, anybody else? Okay. So we'll go with number 3, update from fire department, fire truck, fire marshal.
Mr. Mayor, as Chief Sanchez is coming up and getting ready, as you know, the city put forward a significant investment in refurbishing some of our fire trucks, and I asked Willie to, it was about time to come forward and just give the council an update on where that process is at. It's going to be something that is ongoing throughout the course of this fiscal year. They do one truck at a time, and it is bumper to bumper, top to bottom. I mean, it just goes all the way through that truck, and hopefully, the idea is when it comes out the other end, it's essentially a brand new truck for these guys. So, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. As Mr. Dilly expressed, we did send one of our fire engines up there to Tucson at W.W. Williams. They're working it. They went to 3 phases. So some of the stuff right here on the PowerPoint and stuff that they've been repairing. And we have before shots. They stripped the truck pretty good. We're going to have new NPA, domain NPA standards on the lighting, on the seats, seat belts, compartments. We actually had it repainted also. As you can see, and some of I was surprised myself to see how much damage, wear and tear on these trucks. They're 1997. They were purchased. Back then we got 3 other trucks. So we can see that a lot of compartments, just the wear and tear of having the equipment in there responding to emergency calls. Takes a beating. We do have new switches going into the dashboard, new seats. They're up to standards. And floor mats. And then it went to the paint shop, which got painted from bumper to bumper. It looks really good. Right now, they're putting all the decals and identification markings on the truck, and we will have that truck here at our first September council meeting. That way, everybody can appreciate the investment that we did on those trucks. So we'll be open to mayor and council as well as anybody from the community who wants to take a look at it. And but a lot of damage to the bumpers that we kind of get used to it seeing day to day. But when you see it up there in the shop and they strip it completely, that's when you see all the little details and the damages that was done to the truck. We can see that one was very interesting at top right. That's one of the front lift springs that we have on the truck, and it was kind of sitting sideways. And there was a reason for it, for the bushing. That one's next to it is supposed to be round, but you can see it has a flat side on it. So it was kind of getting to the point that it was really unsafe to be driving around responding with lights and sirens to emergencies. And again, this is part of the stuff they did with the transmission, that they found a lot of metals in the transmission, so they had to tear it down and overhaul the whole transmission itself. And you can see some of the seals that were leaking a lot of oil. And again, these were 1997 trucks.
Everything was pulled out from the truck, even the water tank for inspection, all the pump, all the piping inside the trucks, everything that needed to be replaced is being replaced. And like Mr. Dilly stated, once the truck comes out, it'll be a good, well investment, almost brand new truck. So it'll be good for another 8 to 10 years. And I mean, they go through the process of tearing everything down and inspecting it. So we're headed up there. I'll take my command staff next week. We have a final inspection of the truck to just kind of do the final approval. And they're putting everything together as we speak up there, and it should be back back in service once we get it back in by the end of August, if not earlier than that. Do we have any questions on the progress of what we spent and everything what we're doing?
The question I have would be, how long has it been in the shop?
We put it there. There's some pictures there from April. I went there for an inspection, but it's been there for almost from May. That's when we started completely tearing it down and working on it. So we're very proud of those trucks. So once we get it back, we'll show it off to everybody here. The other item I was asked to speak is the progress that we've had with fire marshal or fire inspector position. Again, thank the mayor and council for allocating those monies to the fire department to work and do the training. We have 2 of our employees in the department that have shown interest to follow that career, that path of being a fire inspector or fire marshal. They've been attending some of the classes. They've been shadowing Division Chief Gomez, who is in that position right now. He's our expert when it comes to inspecting all the business and doing arson investigation of any fire. So we have the 2 candidates that have been at least on their off-duty days. They've been shadowing Division Chief Gomez at least 4 hours almost every day when they're off. And they've been doing plan reviews with them. They've started the training on electronic plan reviews and basic use of the tools available in that program. It's a program that we have installed available to the Fire Marshal Division. It's something that we receive plans electronically from planning and zoning. So they're in the process of doing the in-house training, so they're doing that with Division Chief Gomez. The trainings are also assisting shift personnel when there's a need to do a fire cause and origin determination. While they're on duty, we have any type of fire, a structure fire, they'll go in there and start the preliminary investigation of the fire. If they find it's too complex, then obviously we bring in our expert, which is Division Chief Gomez, to continue the investigation of the fire. Some of the trainees have attended a training on cause and origin of fatal fires and fire arson investigation. 3, these are classes that will serve them when we fulfill that position. And then again, we're spending our money wisely as much as we can to try to get them up to par, at least started in that position as fire marshal. These 2 members attended a 1-week class from Prescott. We have them also for September coming up for the State Fire School. They'll be attending a training on life and safety devices, sprinkler system, fire alarms, fire pumps, and they'll be completing the Fire Inspector 1 and 2 certification. In the 2nd week of October, the 2 trainings will be attending a week-long training in Tucson, Arizona, sponsored by the Arizona building officials regarding several different subjects to include, but not limited to, commercial plan reviews, sprinkler system plan reviews, fire alarms plan reviews, and general instructions and commercial and kitchen fire suppression systems. So the money that was allocated to us, we're using it wisely, and I think those 2 candidates with this training that we're having, hopefully by the end of the year, they'll meet at least the minimum qualifications. So hopefully when we come next year, that we're able to open that position again. I can answer any questions if you have any right now.
Yes, I'm glad you're getting those trucks repaired up to par. You know, it's been in the back of our minds for all these years because of the budget. But now that you're getting it done, it's going to be a big plus for us.
I agree.
You know, if you compare the cost of a new one and getting these 3 other ones repaired, no way you can match the cost.
And that's
Pretty
two out of
great.
the, yeah, it's 2 out of the 4 fleet that we have, so hopefully next year we'll have more funds available to send the other 2 trucks that we have for refurbishing.
Councilman Robles, question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was one of the questions that I was going to ask. As far as the cost, what was the cost for the improvements on that?
For both
Our
trucks, we, 210,000 was the proposal or the quote for them. So we kind of split 105 and 105 for each one.
Okay. And who does the inspections and approval of the truck?
That was done at the W.W. Williams up in Tucson. And they put it into, they lift it up and go bumper to bumper, and they'll kind of note out what things that need to repair. And obviously, when it goes back again, they need to go to a more thorough inspection of the trucks.
Willie, on our end, who does the inspection and approval saying, yes, it's good to go?
Oh,
We'll
that'll be
take-
command staff, and also with fleet. We will be taking our fleet, Alfonso Lopez as well, probably Steve Miranda as a mechanic, just to walk through the truck, make sure everything was done. And it's ready to come back to the city of Nogales.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dale.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, just to follow up on Councilman Rojas' question, so what would the replacement cost be if we were to buy a new fire truck?
Brand new truck, we were looking at some prices to replace them. We're looking at between $450,000 to $600,000 to buy a brand new truck.
So significant cost savings.
Yes, sir.
For one
One truck.
The ladder truck that we have was close to $1 million.
Now, what kind of warranty or guarantee covers all this?
I think on some of the parts that were replaced, as per Mr. Alfonso Lopez, I think we're doing about 2 or 3 years on some of the, like the transmission and like that.
So pretty much, probably about the same warranty when you buy a new one.
Yeah.
That sounds like a savings.
Mayor, as you can see, I mean, they go through, I mean, their hands are touching every single part of that truck. So, it's a good investment, and it's a lot of creative thought on the part of command staff and finance department to figure out a way to make it happen.
As soon as this one's ready, you're taking the other one, right?
That is correct. So when we get this one back, we'll send you all.
I think it would be a failed opportunity or a missed opportunity to not bring up the fact that originally there was programmed to have 3 trucks go through that. Is that
That's
correct? So, I mean, financially, we were only able to support 2 this fiscal year. So I just want to keep your mind, wrapped around the thought that there's another truck out there that, kind of falls into this category, and if we can manage to throw that one into the budget to make that refurbish happen, it would be a good deal for the next fiscal year.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. And item D, presentation and discussion on City of Nogales Employee Benefit Trust Wellness Program.
Mayor, if I may ask that that be tabled, we had intended to present the council with what was going to, what has been developed at this point, but not all members of the committee could be present. And I wanted everybody to be present because they've got a really impressive presentation, and I wanted all of them to be here. So if we can table that to the next meeting.
Okay. We have a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Number 6, discussion item.
Mr. Mayor, don't you need a second?
Yeah,
No,
we need a
yeah.
second.
Do we second it?
Yeah. Second, right?
We needed a second.
We need a second.
Well, you didn't get a second?
No.
Second.
Pretty quick on that.
Yeah, you're quick, man.
Okay, we have a second here. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now, number 6, discussion items. One, response to criticism. Councilman Parad.
Yes, I directed this to Vigo, so we can give some of the answers that were put up. It was on the response to the criticism. and ask legal to answer some of the questions that we put out.
Okay, so that's during the call of the public, right? Is that what we're addressing? And did you have something to say about that, or is there a question in particular that?
Well, to respond to some of the criticism is that when people come to the call to the public, we can't respond back. You know? So we have to stay, keep our peace until they're through. Unless you get abusive, maybe we have a way to shoot back.
I believe they attacked the individual. The individual has the right to.
Are you asking what the ground rules are for calls of the public?
No. Well, I already explained the ground rules, but it is when you come to a call to the public, if we cannot go one-on-one with them, unless you get abusive, then we have a way. Well, that's one of them. And the other one I had in mind was the other, they were brought up that the conflict of interest. It was pointed out to Mr. Lucero, the conflict of interest, and I think we're all in conflict. We're all members of the Chamber of Commerce. So, would you answer that? Is there a conflict?
Okay, let me respond first to the call of the public.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You can respond to specific criticism that is made during the call to the public. The council can. You can't participate in the back and forth discussion. But if there's specific criticism or specific statements that were in error, you can correct those. Okay? But that's the extent of what can happen at the when somebody gets up on that podium in the call of the public. Now, the mayor, as the chairman of the council here, is in charge of conducting the meeting. If he were to feel that something was being done abusively there, something, personal attacks or matters, somebody was not being conducted, the statements were not being conducted in a civil manner or something to that effect, then the mayor, as the chairman here, could then put a stop to that. Limit what he's saying, and if necessary, instruct the sergeant at arms, which would be Mr. Dilly, to have that person removed if it came to that. So it's the mayor that has the discretion to limit what is being said and how it's being said, if it becomes abusive as far as that. Now, as far as the conflict question you have, it's really not on the agenda as such, but what I can respond to that is that I have prepared a memo for council in which I did a legal analysis regarding what a conflict of interest would entail. In a nutshell, unless you have a financial interest or a proprietary interest, property interest in the matter before you, then you don't have a conflict. If you do, then you have a conflict. If your interest in the matter is as general as anybody else's, then there is no conflict. But other than that, let's not go into more discussion because it's really not part of the agenda.
Well,
but if you have any questions regarding the memo, let me know.
Right, the library issues, would they cover the contract, to discuss the contract?
Yes, yes.
Would you bring it up to par? What took place with that contract with the county? And us bring.
I don't want to pass the buck on it.
No,
yeah, okay. We prepared the contract that we had asked the county to sign, the intergovernmental agreement, had been prepared years ago, and the county had not signed that agreement. In fact, the county had given us notice that they were terminating whatever agreement was in place. For a couple of years, they continued, and the city continued to operate as if the previous agreement was in place. There came an occasion this last time around that the city, because of steps that the county was taking in not notifying the city whether or not they were going to enter into the agreement, then the council took the steps that it did. And Mr. Dilly can fill in the details, and that's what I mean about, I don't want to be past the buck, but he's more familiar with the exact steps. On the legal aspect, I resubmitted the same contract that we had offered so many years ago, and it was ultimately approved by the council. It was sent back to us, Board of Supervisors, sorry, and then sent back to us, and that's what's on the agenda tonight for the council approval of that.
Okay, thanks. I guess those are 3 points that I wanted to clarify so that everybody can get input and the public know about it. Thank you. Any questions?
Any more questions? Okay. You don't want to elaborate any, right?
Well,
That's fine.
no,
You covered it pretty well.
I mean, I
You covered
guess
it pretty well.
what you're saying is, in a nutshell, the city was not at fault, the staff or the council, my office, or anybody, was not at fault for what occurred. We did everything that we could possibly do to get the county to sign the agreement in a timely manner. What the council decided to do to bring it to a head was a result of the inaction of the county. And that's all in a nutshell, and I'm sure that's what everybody wants to know, and that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that information. We'll go to number 2, discussion and possible action on ITAP by Vice Mayor Lucero.
Thank you, Mayor. What I wanted to do is just discuss the history of economic development, I guess, in our community. Back when I first came to Santa Cruz County, City of Nogales, it was early 2000, and at the time, the economic development entity that existed was the Nogales Santa Cruz County Economic Development Foundation. It was primarily funded by Citizens Utility. Citizens Utility was bought out by TEP, and they cut funding to the organization, and we were void of any true economic development organization at the time. What transpired is everyone sort of went their own direction. The city did their own efforts, the county did their own efforts. Nogales Community Development Corporation were doing their own thing. Chamber of Commerce was out on their own. It was pretty dysfunctional, and it became more apparent when federal or state officials would come to Nogales. They would get mixed messages depending on which entity they spoke to. So, for example, they could speak to the county and get one message, and speak to the city and get another message. Back at that time, there was a strong effort put together between the city, the county, and these other groups, and the result was the creation of the Port Authority. Several people that are on the Port Authority or were instrumental in creating it were very involved at that time. So back then, it was then Mayor Ignacio Barraza that was involved, Supervisor Manny Reese, myself, Terry Shannon, Harlan Capon, I believe Niels, you were involved in the process as well. So a lot of effort was put into the creation of the Port Authority, and at that time it was primarily funded, I think, by both city and county contributions, with the idea that private sector would eventually start generating enough support where it could become self-sustaining. And I think for the most part that has happened, and the Port Authority has done an excellent job at representing the entire region when it comes to issues that concern Nogales and the greater Santa Cruz area. Last year, the previous administration created the city's Economic Development and Tourism Board, and I think it was well intended, but I think it immediately created conflict amongst the entities that I've mentioned already. And I was fortunate enough to be appointed to that board, and right from the get-go, there was a division between the tourism supporters and the economic development supporters, And I think the committee has been in existence for over a year now and has yet to bring forward a recommendation to mayor and council to address any specific issue related to economic development or tourism. And I guess where I'm at now, this issue got brought up during the budget process where I moved to move funding that was allocated for EdTab over to the Chamber of Commerce and got, I guess, some comments, but and both positive and negative. And I guess the way I see it at this point, I think it's creating too much of a conflict within the community that my recommendation is that we continue to move forward with the support of the Port Authority. I thank the members that have participated in the EdTab board and dissolve the group. And I think probably more important to the city as an organization is that perhaps, Mayor, you form a task force to look at internal issues specific to the city on how the city can help and promote economic development by looking at either improving or doing away with obstacles that hurt or help businesses. And also for tourism, looking at a task force specific to looking at how can the city promote tourism and assist the tourism entities that exist in our area.
In other words, kind of fine tune more of the responsibility of the reports and maybe talk about separating and having two different.
And I think just remove the bureaucracy that becomes inherent in a government formed committee, and I don't know if, and perhaps legal can chime in, if the mayor formed a specific task force to look at one specific task and focus on that for the next 3 to 4 months and come back with recommendations, and that would be their sole purpose. Would that be less bureaucratic than
You could legally do it that way. I don't know if it would be less or more bureaucratic.
well, I guess I'm wondering, do you still have to comply with all the?
Yes, you would. If it's a city committee, yeah, they have to do the public notice and agendas and all that stuff.
Even if the mayor just said, I'm creating a task force, this is the people I'm.
Well, if it's an official mayor's or council task force, then yes, it would have to comply. But they're not difficult, and I'll help you with them. I mean, all you have to do is post the agenda and keep minutes of it. I mean, it's not a big deal.
And Mayor, we've got members of the EdTab board here, and I don't know if they want to, I guess, give their perspective on their experience with the board and whether it is serving a purpose or not, and if they see value in continuing it. I'm not opposed to it. I just think we put a lot of energy into something that hasn't borne any fruit, I guess.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Vice Mayor, I certainly appreciate the item being put forward. One of the things that I think was in part the impetus for the creation of the EdTab group was the ongoing conversation that happens amongst a number of players. I wish I could remember the entity that did the study, but there were, I remember being called into the new, Cochise College here and being interviewed by a couple of ladies that were doing a study through a grant. And one of the products of that report was everybody seems to want to do good, but because everybody's going in all these different directions, we need to have an entity that pulls everybody together, whether that's the Port Authority, whether that's the chamber, whether that's the city or the county. Somebody needs to, bring people together under some cohesive plan to move economic development and tourism forward. And I know that was in part, at play in the creation of the EdTab group. One of the questions I think, in all fairness, in this process to ask ourselves is, it's certainly important to ask, have we gotten any value out of it? That's a very important question to ask and a very important answer to have in your own minds. But I think equally important is, can there be some reshaping, some different direction to actually get the value out of it that you're looking for? And I think in all fairness, that's a relatively important question to be asking yourself, because the fact is that this council did go through the effort of creating that group under certain bylaws, and also in fairness, the group only was by design to meet every quarter, so they don't really meet that often. I've thought about concerns that I've heard, not because I was sitting on those in those discussions, but as I'm looking at the council agendas, there's certainly a missing link between that group and who it reports to, the city council. There was no expectation for that group to have a return report to you as a city council. What are you doing? How's it going? Now, I know looking back, Vice Mayor, there was a comment made that there really hasn't been anything that was brought forward to the council for action. And in fact, there have been items that were brought forward and in the form of formal orders. But it's not, obviously, it's not to any level that meets your satisfaction. So again, I just asked the question, is it something that could have value if it was re-engineered or redesigned or recharged with something that you guys felt? And if the answer to that question is no, then obviously, we shouldn't be wasting our time or the time of the volunteers who come to the table and participate, and we need to move in a different direction. And this has nothing to do with the value that the chamber brings, the value that the Port Authority brings. They have incredible value to the community. This was really in part designed to bring everybody together and help us all move in a same fashion. So I just have those quick thoughts.
Well, one of the things that I've seen, because I've been gone to their meetings, because I noticed we weren't getting any reports, and I was wondering myself what was going on. But I've also been going to the Port Authority, and I've seen what the Port Authority is doing. You can't compare it to what the EdTap is doing.
Absolutely.
I mean, if anybody's giving direction as an engine for our community, it's the Port Authority. They're taking all the factors. They're taking everybody, and I think that their sense of direction, if I'm not mistaken, was to continue to grow and let more people become involved in the Port Authority. And I think that was a great sense of direction. Now, we could probably bring in some of the people from the EdTap, maybe like Mr. Macedo said, get one board or combine them, but I think we need to talk more about it and see how we can bring the best out of it and include it with the Port Authority. And I think, if I'm not mistaken though, Mr. Neil Erdman, you were kind of the one that gave it more direction and kind of kept it at least the energy level, you and Mr. White, the last few months, or the last part of the last.
I think we were able to keep the meetings down to 2 hours, but that was our greatest goal.
But anyway, you're familiar both with the Port Authority and what goes on. So maybe we just need to get together and speak more and give it a little more time and plan it out better and see what we can do. But yes, go ahead, Mr. Erdman.
Do you mind?
Well, I guess I called your name, so
Thank you.
I'll give you the opportunity. Just,
Is there bulletproof glass?
for those that don't know who you are.
Good evening. My name is Neil Sermon. I live on 3019 North Calle Coronado, Meadow Hills, Nogales, Arizona. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. I've had the good fortune, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the EdTap board since its inception. And I'm also been volunteering and actually paid in the economic development playground for quite a few years here in Nogales. It's a passion of mine. I've been involved with the initial creation of the Port Authority. I'd like to give a little background before we talk about EdTab, about the Port Authority. Many, many years ago, there were a lot of different entities in Nogales, whether they were local governments, federal governments, local business organizations, Produce Association, Economic Development Foundation, the Maquila Association, U.S. Customs House Brokers, and everyone was approaching economic development from their own. The idea was initially to put together an economic development roundtable, a place where all the entities that are participating in economic development and active in economic development could sit down and kind of understand what everybody else is doing and understand that everyone has a specialty and that everyone is working in their space, and that if somebody else is working on something and that's their area of expertise, then they would be the ones that we would all defer to and support their activities. And that's really how the Port Authority came to be. It's not a closed club. It was designed to be organizations, members of it. So it's the U.S. Customs House Brokers, it was originally the Chamber of Commerce, it was the Santa Cruz Tourism Alliance at the time before it went defunct. It was the City of Nogales, Santa Cruz County. It was the place where everyone could come to the table and understand who was doing what, and that they would get the support around it. Its initial impetus and really the driving force that we were able to all get behind, and it was really an exercise of how can everyone learn to work together, and how can everyone take their current thing that they're like most passionate about and kind of put it on the sideline while we go for the benefit of the greater community to support efforts and investment. And that's where, you know, the support around the Mariposa Port came in. And so it's always been about that, and it's about leveraging dollars. And so the City of Nogales and Santa Cruz County initially were big funders, and the city continues to fund the Port Authority. It should be said that, and so you all know, that the city members of the Port Authority pay between $2,000 and $3,000 a year to be at that table. And then depending on the partner, they will invest in the organization their own way. So you see a lot of people out of the Customs House Brokers industry and the produce industry actually go to Mexico City, Washington, D.C., and do travel on behalf of this community and paying it out of their own business's pocket. And that you don't see in many communities out there. This is very unique to this community. There are other organizations that know how to access federal money, and so they go out and write grants on behalf of the partnership. So to your comment about the interview that you went to, that was an effort on the part of Nogales Community Development, wrote funding on behalf of the Port Authority and also the EDF to go out and do some basic local research for this community so that we could understand kind of what the area looks like, get engagement and input from broad constituents within the community to be able to get a sense of certain directions. And some of those fundings led to the study that we're all currently using on the economic benefit of the produce industry and also the manufacturing sharing industry, the maquiladora industry, and logistics and supply chain in this region. So it's wherever someone can come and bring something to the table. There's an effort currently going on right now where someone came in and that fine-tuned the Port Authority's website. It's creating a specific website for the Economic Development Foundation, which it never had, called Nogales, and it's nogales.com, which is really focusing around some asset inventories that are going on right now, because that's been a gap. We haven't had asset inventories, and also focusing on the benefits of foreign trade zone as an economic driver in this community. And then it's a co-branding thing. So what you'll see is some websites are going to come up, and they're going to share a logo that's a partnership logo that is an N called the Greater Nogales. So it'll show that there are partners within the community. The City of Nogales developed the EdTab board. It took two entities or two kind of subject matters, sectors out of the economic development realm and tried to put them to the table together. And those typically drive off of different passions. So we took economic development as kind of infrastructure, business support, development, those sorts of things, and we put it together with the tourism component piece, which is a highly passionate component piece. And the conversation kept coming out to a broader conversation beyond the City of Nogales. And it's really difficult when we all get together and start to talk that we can't dial it back sometimes. We have an opportunity in this community to really work with the City of Nogales, maybe in a few different entities and some of the structure that the city currently has, about how do we talk about downtown development and supporting those? How do we talk about infrastructure needs that have to go out on the Mariposa Port? You just did some big water infrastructure stuff. The City of Nogales on its own is doing a lot of things within the economic development sphere, but we're not all seeing it. So you have your business improvement district that you passed You have some incentives of downtown infrastructure development. You have the guide that you put together, you did the water out there, you're at the table on some of the bigger infrastructure things. I think that the challenge of the EdTab board was, it was this big, it's difficult to harness, and quite frankly, being able to work in a working group with staff to move issues and put things together to bring forward through the staff piece is far easier than to do formal meetings with agendas and running a meeting a certain way and knowing, up front, because it's always about how do you work and put something together. That takes daily effort. And I think that's kind of one of the challenges we found on the board. And then the tourism component piece is, like, we talk about tourism in Nogales, in the city limits of Nogales, which we really need to do some focus on, but then we start to, we got birds, and we got Patagonia, and we got Tubac, and we can't agree sometimes on who our customer is. Are they from Sonora? Are they from Europe? Are they from Phoenix? Are they from Tucson? And so these are things that sometimes need to work separately, and economic development is a long-term effort. And you don't come out to the end of it. And so I think that's been one of the big challenges of kind of working in that environment. So from a personal standpoint, I've felt that as a participant, I haven't been able to properly give and share what I think are some issues that we could be working on, and I think we have some gaps in economic development in Nogales. We're doing some great big picture stuff, but we have some assets that we need to start to focus on. There are a lot of trends. There's trends of economic development, transit-oriented economic development, focusing on bus lines and how you do that. There's economic development around the arts that we haven't moved into that space yet. There are economic development for micro enterprise and local businesses and lending capacity. So it's big, and I think the city of Nogales has some niche skill sets and expertise that if we could really start to just work on those, understanding that there are other players and partners in the community that do some of the other work, and how do we support those and become players at that table. So I'm sorry it took so long.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm working on my dissertation.
That's kind of, I guess Neil sort of hit the nail on the head. We've got an entity already that for all intents and purposes, is doing what EdTab was, I guess, formulated to do, sort of reinventing the wheel. And I think it draws back to the point where if we just focused on things specific to the city of Nogales and maybe create a task force that looks specifically at those economic development issues. And again, I think Neil sort of hit it on the head too. There's, for lack of a better word, there always seems to be this conflict between the tourism component versus the...
And I don't want to use the word conflict, because it's a tough word. It's like oil and water sometimes. Yeah. There are some different things that need to get done.
And that's why I was suggesting separating the two groups and creating another task force to focus on the tourism component, what the city can focus on specifically, as opposed to working. It's very difficult for the city to look at a regional issue, because all we can really impact is that which is within the city. So I think that created a lot of issues as well.
And if I might add one thing, as a recovering retailer, we're challenged in this community right now, and that's really an effort that we need to be able to do, is how do we build and support local retail and national retail and be able to support both in this community, because we live and die by that. We're a sales tax driven municipality, and it's not looking very good in our neck of the woods downtown. And if you go out to Mariposa Road, folks, the retail industry today is not pretty. What are the things that we can all sit down and work on? We've got lots of extra empty square footage in this community. We have new stores that have opened up, but if you start to look at the transactions and the folks that are, how many cars are in those places, it's tough. And we really need to be able to drive people in this community, have them eat here, sleep here, and shop here. And it's really a gap that some of us, myself included, need to get in and be part of a solution to that.
Thank you. That was thank you very much for doing that. Great job. Very well put and very well put. Thanks, sir. And again, I guess that's the specific of it is to maybe continue with that engine of putting in general the Port Authority and the one that's giving us a sense of direction and get our own board to kind of just help within the city of Nogales, but yet still be at the table with the Port Authority and for the region. Did I get that right from what you were saying, Mr. Aaron? I don't know, you didn't mention the
I'm
Port
not a very
Authority
concise
specific,
guy, so.
but anyway, that's what I kind of gathered. What I've seen so far, the Port Authority is a driving engine. Yes,
But you know, you have the 4 pillars, most of them here present. You got the Port Authority, you got the Chamber, you got the economic development, and you got the fresh produce. You know, that could be 4 pillars that you need to get this thing started.
Well, I guess as you said, well, you mentioned those, I think most of them are part of the Port Authority, Mr. Becker. I think they're, and that's why I think that the Port Authority is that driving engine that really is kind of bringing us all together and giving us the direction that we need. And I think we just need to continue to head in that direction and work together and try to figure out how to bring more, not only retail, I was hoping bring another industry, maybe some kind of manufacturing, whether it be a cannery or whatever, during the produce season. It's things to look into.
Mr. Mayor, I got one other, I guess, comment having to deal with the myriad of issues that Neil's raised. One is that, I think Aaron White has done an excellent job at providing staff support to the group and has worked well with each of the entities that we've discussed. And I guess, in my opinion, I think he would probably be more of an asset if he would provide staff support to each of these entities and get himself engaged in their day-to-day activities, which I think would probably be a better return on our investment. So in other words, if for example, Aaron could work with the Port Authority, because I know they're short-staffed, if he could lend his services to assist them on day-to-day activities as well as the Chamber and NCDC and whatever tourism groups are out there, I think he would add significant value to their operations, and in return the city would get a big return on that investment.
I'm sorry, can I comment to that? Mr. White just recently reached out to us in downtown and facilitated a meeting between planning and zoning and the public works director and John Haynes from the flood control. The whole conversation being what are the challenges of redeveloping downtown, especially since we're going through some projects down there. And so the idea of being able to be the facilitator, to be able to bring some of us and different experts, folks to the table, to have these conversations of how we can learn to work through the current systems and how we can facilitate this stuff, and then be able to articulate back out to investment what you need to do and what there are always these perceptions that all these regulations are the biggest barriers to growth or investment in this community. And I think we're learning there are ways around that. We really need to be able to have the liaison within the local government that can help us move around and learn more.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, one of the charges that I gave Aaron when we created this new role for him was to in fact be that liaison, to be that person that kind of helped hold the hand of the developer as he's going or she's going through the process, to in fact reach out to these other entities that are working in like mind and in like fashion to further economic development and tourism, to help facilitate. So I think in large part, Aaron in his capacity is doing that role. I'm sure with the comment tonight, that's only going to intensify. So I think the tool is here. It's in our toolbox, and I appreciate the comments about Mr. White and his efforts, because you know, it's unending. I mean, he really has a passion for helping and help, you know, and holding hands and getting, you know, getting people through what is perceived to be a lot of bureaucracy. And there are ways to get through that, as long as you know there's somebody on the other side that wants to help you get through there. Oftentimes, you know, that bureaucracy is created because an employee's job is to make sure that things are done a certain way. That's their job. You know, they need to make sure that the foundation is right. They need to make sure that the utility is under the ground a certain way and buried just right. And there's a lot of these do's and rules. But Aaron can sit down with the developer and talk, and sit down with our staff in the planning or engineering departments and kind of help bridge gaps of, you know, of communication and make those things happen. We get reports and, you know, emails and phone calls from developers that have come in and just throwing a lot of accolades at the city for helping them go through this process, and it was a pleasant experience, you know. So those kind of things tell me that we're doing something right. And you know, I appreciate Neil's comments. As a product of this, this discussion, I just want to manage expectations on particularly your expectation on me as it relates to the EdTab board. You know, if it's going to change and morph, is it going to go away? And I'm going to make it happen, whatever the decision is. So, you know, I'm kind of hearing kind of two different messages, and I just want to get some clarification on how you want staff to move forward as it relates to the board itself.
Mr. Mayor, I guess just for I think again the EdTab was well intentioned, but it's not, I think, producing what everyone's expectations were. And again, my recommendation, I don't know if we can do this in the form of a motion, and please clarify, but my recommendation is that we would move to dissolve EdTab and you know, thank the members for their participation, and that we create two separate task forces, one to focus on economic development and one to focus on tourism, specific to the city, and then the staff part of it you can handle internally.
Sure.
Can that be done?
And that's your motion.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Now, with that, so we would be working down the road about establishing another board that, or using maybe some of the members that are there right now, and just have a board for tourism and a board for.
If I'm not mistaken, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the dialogue from the 80,000-foot level and bring it down to the 10,000-foot level. And one of the better ways of doing that is, instead of having a discussion with the larger group, because that's tough, especially with what we heard from Niels, where it's kind of an oil and water, not in a bad way, but it's just their passions drive them a little bit differently. To two separate groups that are smaller and are able to do a little more by way of the strategic, you know, laser type projects in that discipline. So if I'm not mistaken.
So this would be step one, and then step two would be later to establish
The committee.
Right. Well, any more discussion on that? Okay, then there's a motion and a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carried. And thank you again, Mr. Ehrman. That was one of your better time dissertations.
Without snacks. Good thing it's recorded, I can put it into your dissertation.
Okay, so that puts us in number 3, discussion and possible direction regarding meeting of Arizona Commerce Authority, Arizona Trade and Investment Office. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. This came to my attention while we were out of town. I was asked if I was going to be attending the trip to Mexico to visit our trade and tourism office. I had no idea what it was all about, and I subsequently spoken with the city attorney and Bruce Bracker from the Port Authority, and I think it's an excellent idea to see how we can promote and further advance Nogales within the region and nationally if possible. But I kind of wanted some sort of agenda, a plan on what what is it we would be doing, and so I've sort of at this point I've spoken with enough people about it. I'm fairly comfortable. I think it's a good idea, but I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Machado and have him sort of explain the purpose of the trip.
Sure.
And the plan, follow-up plans.
Sure. Actually, as it's been going on, it's really been developing. We've had a lot of input from different people. Just this evening, I had some more. So it's getting there. This was an idea initially that came about as a result of a meeting that we had with Mayor Rothschild. Mayor Doyle and myself met with him, and we were talking about the different trade issues and so on. The state of Arizona, the Commerce Authority has the trade office in Mexico. The city of Tucson has partnered with them and in that, and they have it staffed and providing services and so on. In that conversation with Rothschild, he suggested that we should go, the city of Nogales, and familiarize ourselves with exactly what's there. So we talked about it, and then Councilman Diaz really got on board, and Aaron's been working on this, and we finally, the plan was trifold. It was we're going to familiarize ourselves with the efforts being taken by the office there. We're going to try to at least preliminarily gauge how that's going to help us or hinder our efforts, and then we're going to determine what kind of resources there that we can put to our use. Now that was initially, but since then, I spoke to Bruce, to Councilman Lopez or Councilwoman Lopez, and it's really. It's going to be a lot more once the preliminary steps are taken. It's going to be Councilman Diaz and I at this point. And it will be our education process at the real basic level. We're going to see what's there. We're going to talk to see, I've got some appointments. Mr. Diaz has made some. It's not with the big decision makers, but that's not the purpose of this meeting, this trip at this point. We're going to identify who we need to talk to and so on. And this is where this conversation that wasn't planned with Mr. Bracker at this point, he came up with some ideas and going with the Port Authority and so on. And so once we decide exactly where we're going to go and who we need to talk to, then we're going to organize a bigger trip with specific meetings and goals with specific people, decision makers. Councilman Lopez has offered her services and that of her son to get appointments with certain specific people. Bruce has got his contacts. So once we kind of get our feet wet and know what we need as a city, then we can start working with everyone else. So that's the type of trip we're making. That's the initial plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, and just a couple of suggestions. One, I would encourage you guys consider taking Aaron with you, as we just discussed, since he's going to be our point person for economic development initiative. I think it'd probably be pretty important for him to continue to fulfill that or help us in that role.
As a matter of fact, I had made that suggestion. I was trying to get Mr. Dilly to okay it.
And the other is in discussing this with Bruce, rather than just focusing on our side of the border, make it a true almost Nogales kind of a trade mission.
That was the idea that Bruce had. I thought it was really great.
And I think that could open up a lot of doors for both sides of the border.
Not only that, Mayor Rothschild says he wants to go along. You know, so you just want him to go, okay. But I mean, you know, once we get all this together, I mean, I think it could be real productive.
I concur.
Well, I'm kind of glad you guys are volunteering, and I see like a reconnaissance trip there, and it's important. I think you know, it's good that it's a small group, because the more they see us up there, it'll help. That's what Mexico's all about, having personal contact with the people over there and seeing the interest. I know Mayor Rothschild was really, has been looking at us whether we were really serious or not about being involved, and I think this will kind of maybe ease his mind a little. But that's yes, I'm sorry.
I think Jaime had his hand up.
Oh, well,
Yes, go ahead. Just for those that don't know, you can go ahead.
I'm Chamberlain, 1670 North Iron Gates Drive, Nogales. Mayor and Council, I really like the fact that you're bringing up this subject on the Arizona office that we have for economic tourism. I was asked to go with Speaker of the House, Andy Tobin, on the first fact-finding mission with 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats from the legislature, senators and representatives. This was a year and a half ago, I believe it was in November. And the original intent of having an office in Mexico City was because we had had so many discussions at the state level as far as the competitiveness of the state of Arizona compared to the rest of the border states, and with how they compete for dollars. It's no longer, you know, the United States against China. It is states against states now, and we are in a very, very competitive business in doing business with Mexico. But we're at a great opportunity. So when the speaker said, you know what, we've got to open an office in Mexico City, they originally already had one in Guadalajara. But we actually stayed in a hotel where the state of Texas has had an office for 44 years. And not only that, but the state of Texas also has several cities that have their own offices in Mexico City also, promoting their own cities, which is Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Metroplex area, and Houston also. So I thought it was a fantastic idea. He invited me to go with him, and there were 3 other businessmen that went with us, and also Glenn Hammer from the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. The original intent was for this legislature to fund the office 100%. The second trip that was done, I believe Mayor Greg Stanton insisted on going on this one, and then after that, when they came back, they said, you know what, the city of Phoenix is going to pitch in a good amount of money. Mr. Machado, I don't know if you know, it's about $125,000, $150,000 that they pitched in, and I believe that the city of Tucson pitched in $50,000. When the original intent was expressed, that was never the intent for the individual cities to start funding, because then you start having the competition between the cities in itself. And that was always my concern for this office here. And as you go and look, and I'm glad that Mayor Rothschild has encouraged you to go, because if we don't go, then the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson, I'm afraid, will get the most benefit from the office in Mexico City. I've been to the office in Mexico City. I was there with Governor Ducey just about a month ago, and with another businessman's group that he took down. And the office is fine, and it's good. But I will tell you, Phoenix is taking the lead completely on that office, and it's practically, if we let it go, it will be called the economic development for the city of Phoenix with Mexico City. And so I don't know what direction. It would be very good to map out a plan with Bruce Bracker and some other people that have already been there, but also come back with a purpose. And what's your goal? What do we want for the city of Nogales here? Not only to go and explore and say, wow, this is great, we've got a lot of opportunities, but I believe that you all as a council have to give direction and say, as a finality, when we get back, this is what we want to see. And direct your meetings within Mexico City for that. Whether it's with Zagarpa or Celisica or with SAT, with Secretaría de Transportes, whoever it may be. But I believe it has to come back with a goal-oriented trip. And say, you know what, this is what we want to see for the city of Nogales, and this is what we want to get out of it. I think that that's the only way you're going to find a real benefit at the end of the day. But you are competing against Phoenix and Tucson. Now, if you go, you may want to come back and say, hey, should we pitch in $25,000 or $50,000? And that may be the next question that the Mayor Stanton or Mayor Rothschild will ask you and say, hey, we're open to taking donations. Our problem was the legislature at the 11th hour, they funded this for 1 more year. The most embarrassing thing that could have happened was it not being funded at all. Therefore, you lose trust, and we already have an image issue in Mexico City and all around Mexico, within the state of Arizona. Not necessarily Nogales. We have an image issue of border wait times and other issues, and but we, as a state, we have major issues to deal with. So as a state, I believe you also have the responsibility to continue to have this funded, but completely from the legislature, not necessarily from the individual cities. Then you start having competitive arguments between, hey, well, wait a minute, we gave $150,000. Why aren't the Cardinals playing against the Cowboys at Azteca Stadium, and why isn't that office focused on doing that? Well, what about the Serie del Caribe in Nogales, Arizona, or Nogales, Sonora, where we would get a benefit both ways? So there's a lot of different things there. When you're not ponying up money, you tend to get left behind. And I'm afraid that that might be the next step in what they're going to be asking.
I would plan on it.
You know, I just wanted to ask you a question. Considering that, like you said, Arizona has it's had its issues, and one of the things that I noticed when we went last week up there to the U.S.-Mexico Summit in El Paso, and I noticed the amount of money Texas puts out overall. I mean, Arizona can't compete. And I noticed in New Mexico kind of sides, they kind of go along with Texas, and Texas has kind of brought them in under their umbrella.
Well, I think Niels was talking about that right now. We have a very, very big issue at hand, and with the peso devaluation and the hurting, and the way it's hurting our community here, we have got to start to find a different mechanism of revenue sources here for the city, because it does not look like this issue on the devaluation of the peso will get any better within the next few months, and possibly within the next year or even longer. So the realities of the economic situation in Mexico are directly affecting our community. So some of the things that Neil said are extremely important. You had said bring in another entity. Let me tell you, I'm in the produce industry, and when people look at wherever it is to get funding for anything, everyone looks straight to the produce industry first. So I myself would welcome any other industry, whether it's mining or whether it's anything else, that would come into Nogales to help out with a lot of the issues that we have. But I think you need to look at that office. What's that?
I like that guy.
Well, I said anything else, mining also. But I said I think that we have to look at the different revenue sources. And when you go down to Mexico City, there are fantastic opportunities. Texas does not have us beat. We have very smart, intelligent, creative people here in our own community that are willing to put up the money, put up the sources, and actually be drivers of our economic engines here. But the problem is that we need to be able to smooth out our problems in with the image. And in Mexico City, if we would not have funded this, they would have never trusted the state of Arizona. And I'm afraid that at the next legislative session, it's a very good possibility that this might not get funded again. Then it might go all back to the cities. Then they'll ask Kingman for money, they'll ask Yuma for money, they'll ask Flagstaff for money. I don't know if that's the way that we should fund a state office.
It's gonna be rough for us, that'll work.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that Councilman Parada and I did after hours, we hit the streets over there at night and talked to the people, and I noticed that the team that was gonna come to Nogales went up there to El Paso. They've got a beautiful stadium up there, and it was packed one of the nights, and they were telling us that even though people don't have money from across the border, they come over to watch the baseball. So they just walk right over the bridge, a lot of them, and they're right there downtown. And that's where that stadium is.
Sports tend to become an image builder, a very good one.
Yeah, and they're doing pretty good with it. Too bad we didn't have enough time to catch a game, but at least we did speak to the people out there, and that's the thing that there's, you know, I think we're fortunate to have our little league teams go and make noise up there in the World Series, and I think there's still one battling, isn't there? I think there's one up there still in the process, or is it over?
I would support you going to Mexico City to take a look and to figure out, but as long as you got the goals when you come back and what you want accomplished.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you got another question?
Yes. Well, with all your expertise and you've been going down there and being in the produce industry and all that, what we have to our advantage is our strategic location. What can we do to build on that? What would you suggest? What could you suggest that we do and build on that?
When the mayor or when the Speaker of the House or the governor have asked me to come with them, I believe it's specifically because I am from this community. And because I've said in many different places that I'm tired of people talking for the border and the border region and for border citizens who really have no idea what it is to live in our community and work here. So I believe that towards your question, I believe that we need to instill, and the council and the city hall in general needs to instill a sense of pride in our community. There are so many people, there are so many kids here who say their undying wish is to get out of Nogales. Well, let me tell you, when you grow up a little bit and you figure out exactly what this community does and the logistics that we work with between not just our country, between Mexico and all over Central America and Asia and Europe, and the things that we deal with in maquiladora industry, in the cattle industry, in the mining industry, and obviously in the produce industry, it's something to be extremely prideful, extremely prideful. We should be very proud, and that's what we have to sell. We have to sell, hey, we are the logistics hub of the United States to Central America and to Mexico. We cannot think of ourselves just as the United States now. We have to think of ourselves as North America, because if we don't, we will get our lunch eaten economically and everywhere else. So I really believe that it's kind of up to you all to say, hey, look at the positive side of what Nogales does. Do we have potholes? Yeah, we've got potholes. Do we have streets that need to get, I'm not looking straight at you. do we have streets? We have a lot of issues, but so do many different communities. Some border ones are even worse than ours. I'd hate to be in Douglas's position. They're really having a tough time there. And I think we have great opportunities. It's just that we need to instill into our citizens that we are very important in the economic engine for our state and for our country. Once we get that, once our citizens know how important we really are, then people will come back and say, hey, you know what? There's an excited community. There's an excited community about, and they feel that they want to grow. And I don't think that we've had that. It's been a tough road, and I really don't have any suggestions on how to do that. except to try to be as positive as possible on every subject that you all touch and speak about.
So, Mr. Chamberlain, I just want to inject a little something here. Being there at the summit, the thing that the panelists were fearful of from this area, Arizona, especially Nogales area, that we're the corridor that comes through Guaymas, and they're concerned about the shipping, that all the Long Beach shipping is going to go down there, and it's not going to go through Texas. So they're trying to work out how they don't know yet, but they're going to try to work how they can get some of that.
Well, I think you're going to start to see things change, Mayor. You're going to start to see a brand new administration with a new governor and a new staff and a new administration in Phoenix, and the attitude is changing already in that area, in the Phoenix area and around the state. And I really do believe that you're going to start getting that support that we need, like what Texas does. Texas has a very clear vision. Their governor dictates exactly what he wants their counties. The counties dictate what they want their cities to do, and the cities dictate exactly what they want their citizens to say, and they are all on one page. And that is a fantastic formula for success. But I believe that we have the opportunity to get there. So you will start to see some good positive changes here in Nogales, and they should be afraid. They should be afraid, because I think we have every ability to do it and get things done and be just as big as Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And just wanted to, I mean, I don't think I could have said it any better than Jaime just did, but that was the whole reason behind putting this item on the agenda for discussion, that I heard about the trip and wanted to make sure that we as a city had a plan going down there, and we had an agenda once we went down there and coming back and you know, following up on the recommendations of Mr. Chamberlain. I think that's exactly what we need to do, is do this reconnaissance mission, come back with a plan on how we're going to capitalize on that trip, and work with the individuals here in the community, the business leaders on both sides of the border, and follow up with return trip and get a big bang for our buck.
Sounds good. Okay, well, if there's no more questions or discussion, and I guess that pretty much cleared it up. Thank you very much, all, and thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Thank you. Okay, here we come. One of the, you know, it's been a little slow going here, but we're going to speed it up now. We've got a couple more pages, but one of them's going to go by pretty quick. On the consent agenda, I guess we have from A to A, and if anybody wants to pull one out, or should we just put them on? Yeah, you guys all very familiar, ready to go?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve all the consent agenda items from A to H. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Let's go to number 8, orders. Consideration and possible action of order 2015-08061, in order of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, increasing the premium contributions made by the city to the Employee Benefit Trust, EBT, for health coverage. And that's finance?
Yes, sir. Sharon, please.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Excuse my voice, it's a little cracked tonight. Thank you. The Employee Benefits Trust Board had approved a 3% increase to a portion of the total monthly health insurance premium effective with the start of FY16. And that approval was based on a recommendation that came from our third-party administrator, which handles all of our bills and insurance issues. And the trustees voted at their April 30th meeting to make a formal recommendation to the City Council of a 3% increase to just a portion of the total monthly premium to help maintain plan solvency. The trustees also recommended that the City of Nogales absorb the additional cost, since it was estimated to be such a relatively small cost. City Council was presented with this recommendation during the budget hearings, and City Council concurred with the trustees' two recommendations at its May 13th meeting. As a result of these recommendations, the employee and employer contributions, just the employer contributions changed slightly. The employee contributions remained exactly the same as they were in the prior fiscal year. And that's both for single employees, employees with family coverage, as well as retirees. So, the estimated cost to the city of Nogales in the current fiscal year is a total of $38,000 across all funds, with $28,000 attributable to the general fund, which are the numbers that were presented to you at the May budget meeting. Today's action is really just a ratification of the changes that were made effective with the start of FY16. In the future, this item will be included as part of the budget adoption, so we'll just do it all at the same time because it becomes effective with the fiscal year, the same with the workers' comp insurance and the risk management insurance. So we'll just bring that all together, do it in one big action as part of the budget action. But in any case, for today and for the current fiscal year, the recommendation is to ratify the rates that were implemented with the start of the current fiscal year, FY16. Any questions?
Any questions from the council?
Thank you.
Do we have a
Thank you, sir.
motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Number 2, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-062, in order of the Council of the City of Nogales approving an intergovernmental agreement with the County of Santa Cruz for library services.
So moved. Second.
Okay. I guess all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carried. Number 3, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-063, in order of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, approving a partial release of the ground lease in 2015, amendment to series 2006, 2009, and 2014 city leases with the Nogales Municipal Development Authority, incorporated as to 1.9 acres to be conveyed to State of Arizona, approving the execution and delivery by Nogales Municipal Development Authority in incorporation of such partial release and amendment, and authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this order.
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Number 4, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-064, in order of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, approving a legislative accessory use Verizon Wireless for a new wireless communication facility located at 750 West Shell Road. And that's planning and zoning. Do we need any discussion on that, or do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second, discussion.
We have discussion? Okay, open for discussion?
Alejandro.
This is a request to put a cell tower in, right behind the Rooster Wings hotel and facility there, and has been going through the process, was recommended to planning and zoning, and we're bringing that for your consideration.
This has been in front of your planning and zoning commission, and they're forwarding it to you with a recommendation to approve.
Do we have any questions, any more discussion?
All the businesses around that area has agreed to that?
Yeah, that was posted and everybody was noticed, and we didn't receive any.
No objection.
No objection.
So when we get complaints later, we can say that.
So all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now we're at the next page. We're getting close. We're getting there. Number 5, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-065, an order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, approving and authorizing the execution of a second amendment to option and site lease with New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC. And that's, I guess, legal. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, we just prepared the documents, but this was, there's a current lease with Singular, and they place antennas on our tanks, right? And they've asked for additional locations, and that's why the amendment allows them to do that for an increased amount.
Mr. Mayor, staff's reviewed it, and the additional request has additional rent tied to that, and it doesn't seem to conflict operationally with our utility services. So it's being put before you for consideration and action today.
Okay, they're recommending it. Okay, so, we have a motion? We have a second?
Wait a second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Number 6, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-066, an order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, approving and accepting utility easement dedication from James and Deborah Barr and 7659 Property LLC.
Mayor, this is a connection with an extension of water lines, is that correct?
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer lines, and so we needed the utility easements to be dedicated in a certain manner and approved by the council, and this is it.
This is it, okay. So we have a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a clarifying question. Alejandro, are these lines somehow part of a bigger picture in terms of the west pressure zone out there or anything like that?
No, they are not. They are linked to MMND. It's a warehouse that's under construction right now.
Different zone, different pressure zone?
It's along Mariposa Road, but it's in a different location. It's not linked to the pressures.
Thank you.
Any more discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carried. Number 7, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-067, an order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Nogales Unified School District Number 1 related to the use of facilities. Okay.
Again, that is just a continuation of the intergovernmental agreement that we have had with the school district regarding use of each other's facilities.
So it's all green lights as far as.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, a second. Do we have discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor?
I just want to state for the record that I do sit as a board member for the Nogales Unified School District Number 1. And I've been accused in the past of having a conflict of interest, and I would like to get a legal opinion and clarify whether or not this is a conflict for me to vote on.
No, it's not. Again, along the analysis of the memos that I've provided you regarding the applicable law, unless you have a particular financial interest in either entity or propriety interest, then no, you do not have a conflict of interest.
So I'm free to vote on this.
You're free to vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, staff's reviewed this contract and there's no material changes between it and what we've had in the past.
Okay, so is there any more questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, motion carried. Number 8, consideration and possible action of order 2015-08-068, in order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Nogales School District Number 1 for the reimbursement of the salaries and employee-related expenses of 2 police school resource officers at Nogales High School and the Wade Carpenter Middle Academy for the year 2015 and 2016 school year.
Again, Mayor, this is a continuation of the funding of the police resource officers. Their attorneys have reviewed it, I have reviewed it, and of course the chief has reviewed it.
Okay.
So
We have a motion to approve, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carried. And number 9, consideration and possible action of order 2015-07-058, in order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, approving an employment agreement with the communications workers of America Local 7000.
Let me make a correction, it's not an employment agreement, it's just an agreement.
An agreement.
Yes, it's not.
Approving an agreement with the communications workers of America Local 7000.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve, a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to just make sure that you're aware, you also approved something last month in terms of concessions or addendums to an existing contract. That carries the union through this fiscal year. What you have tonight is the product of ongoing negotiations with CWA that would become effective July of 2016. Okay, so we're a little ahead, but that's what you're acting on tonight. I've been party to all of those discussions and am forwarding it to you for recommendation to them.
Do you have any more questions or discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye to approve.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. Motion carried. Now, we have item number 9, executive session. And I guess we'll take a little walk to the back room.
We need a motion to.
We have a motion?
Second. Go into executive session.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. We're going to resume our regular meeting. We already had executive session, and we have item 10, which was additional discussion item and possible action regarding. We're going to go ahead and Mr. Lucero, I guess since you put it, you want to go ahead and
Mr.
make a
Mayor,
motion on that?
I believe we've had fruitful discussion in executive session, and we don't need to take any action at this time.
Thank you. So, do we make a motion then? Is that, no? That's okay? Now, so we're going to go ahead then, and then number 10, we're not taking any action, and we're going to go to the city manager's report.
Mr. Mayor, I think we've covered quite a bit of information.
You're okay? Okay. You spoke enough tonight on
Well, no. If there's no discussion.
I just remembered that.
Yeah, if there's no discussion.
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Gillis.
I think we've covered quite a bit tonight in terms of discussion. I certainly have, and I'm excited about the things that we have to look forward to, and I'll start making progress with that. So
Good, thank you.
it's a late hour.
Oh, okay. Well, future agenda items. Anybody right at this point? Great. Then, I guess if anything comes up, well, we'll take it from there. I guess pretty much that covers the meeting tonight, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.